again. Please just stop. I have to work in the morning. That's it.
You heard that?
Yes?
You've been pacing every night. It's almost 3.
I didn't realize it was disturbing you. It sounds like your drag's unbearable. For the inconvenience.
I don't want your money.
It's easier.
I want quiet. There's someone else in there.
That won't concern you.
What are you doing in there?
It won't happen again.
Night.
Good night.
At exactly 2:40 a.m., the ceiling started pacing again. It was not the soft creak of an old building settling into the night. It was not the light footsteps of someone getting water or walking to the bathroom. This was steady, measured, back and forth, step, step, pause, step, step. Ava Carter lay flat on her back in her small studio apartment in Gyeryong House, staring at the faint shadow in the corner where the ceiling met the wall. Her eyes were open. They had been open for almost an hour. She had learned the sounds of this building during the first few months of her fellowship. Gyeryong House was old, stubborn concrete, the kind of place that survived trends and shiny towers. During the day, Mandu Row outside smelled faintly of fried dumplings and hot oil. At night, the air changed to damp pavement and distant traffic. The building had personality. It creaked. Pipes hummed. Neighbors cooked late. But this sound was different. Step, step, pause. A scrape followed, heavy and slow, like something thick was being dragged across the floor. Ava closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe slowly. She had to be at the Sora Museum Conservation Wing in 5 hours. She would be under bright lights, working over a fractured lacquer panel that was older than the country she came from. One mistake, one slip of her hand, and years of history could be damaged. She could not afford to be exhausted. Another scrape sounded overhead. Ava sat up.
Stop.
Her hair was wrapped in a silk
morning.
scarf.
That's
An
it.
oversized t-shirt hung off one shoulder. Her apartment was modest. Just a bed, a narrow desk, a kitchenette, and a single window that looked into another building's wall. She had promised herself she would not become the foreign tenant who complained about everything. She was here for a year. She could handle city noise. But this was not city noise. Step, step, pause. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and slipped her feet into the pink bunny slippers her sister had mailed as a joke before she left home. The soft ears bounced slightly as she stood. Enough, she muttered quietly. She grabbed her key and opened her door. The corridor outside was narrow and dim. A yellow bulb buzzed faintly in its fixture. The light flickered once and steadied. The air smelled
You heard
faintly of
that?
garlic as if someone had cooked late. Somewhere down the hall, a rice cooker clicked off with a soft metallic sound. Everything felt too still. She walked toward Unit 7F. The pacing above her had been going on for nearly an hour. Whoever lived there clearly did not care that it was almost 3 in the morning. Ava stopped in front of the door and knocked once, firm and loud. The pacing stopped instantly. Not slowly. Not fading. It stopped the second her knuckles hit the wood. Her stomach tightened. She waited. Counted to 3. Knocked again. The door opened on the second knock. Slowly. Controlled. He filled the doorway without trying to.
Yes?
You've been
Broad
pacing
shoulders.
Every night. It's almost 3.
Dark hair
I didn't
slightly
realize it was
tousled like he
disturbing
had
you.
run
It
his
sounds like
hand
you
through
dragged
it too many
something
times. His shirt was partially unbuttoned, collar open. The faint edge of a tattoo disappeared beneath clean fabric at his throat. He did not look sleepy. He did not look surprised. His face was calm. His eyes settled on her as if he had already decided what she was. Yes, he asked. His English was clear. Precise. There was an accent, but it did not soften his voice. Ava straightened her shoulders. I'm your downstairs neighbor, she said evenly. I know. The answer came too quickly. Ava held on to irritation like a rope. You've been pacing for an hour. And dragging something heavy across the floor. It's 3 in the morning. A small pause. His gaze moved past her shoulder, down the hallway. Quick, subtle. Like he was checking something without turning his head fully. Then he looked back at her. I wasn't aware it was loud. The lie was smooth. It's loud, Ava replied. It sounds like you're moving furniture. She stopped herself from saying anything else. Her imagination had been running too far. He stepped back 1 inch, just enough to reach inside the apartment without breaking eye contact. When he returned, he held a folded stack of cash between 2 fingers. For the inconvenience, he
The
said.
inconvenience.
Ava stared at the
I
money.
don't want your
Then
money.
she stared at him.
It's easier.
I didn't come
I
here
want
for money.
quiet.
It's the quickest solution. No, she lifted her chin. The quickest solution is you keeping it down. Silence stretched between them. His eyes did not change, but something behind them shifted. Like he was reassessing. Behind him, deeper in the apartment, something moved. A shadow.
There's
A
someone
man
else
in a
in
dark
there.
suit stood
That what
partially in
concerns
view for
What
half
are
a
you doing
second.
in there?
Sharp
Won't happen
lines.
again.
Night.
Still
Good night.
posture. Then he stepped back into darkness. Ava's heartbeat picked up. "You have people over?" she said carefully. "Yes." One word. No explanation. She did not like that. "I'm not asking what you're doing," she continued. "I don't care. I just need sleep." He stepped slightly forward, just enough to block her view of the interior completely. It wasn't aggressive. It was precise. "It won't happen again," he said. Not an apology. A statement. Ava felt the air change. The hallway felt narrower. "Okay," she replied. Continuing this conversation suddenly felt dangerous in a way she could not explain. She turned and walked back down the corridor. She did not look over her shoulder. She did not need to. She could feel his eyes on her back until she reached her door. Inside her apartment, she locked it, then turned the deadbolt, then added the chain even though she had never used it before. Upstairs, the pacing stopped completely. The silence that followed was immediate, total, and worse than the noise. It felt like someone had flipped a switch, like it had stopped because he decided it would stop. Ava climbed back into bed, pulled the blanket up to her chest. She told herself she was overthinking it. Minutes passed. Then she heard muted voices overhead. Oh, controlled. The sound of men speaking softly. Another scrape. Quieter this time. As if whoever was moving something had learned how to do it without being heard. Ava stared at the ceiling. Her body would not relax. She could not explain why her skin felt tight, why her pulse would not slow. It was not just the noise. It was the way he had looked at her. Not annoyed. Not embarrassed. Measured. Like she had knocked on something more solid than a door. Another faint sound above her. Not loud enough to complain about. Just loud enough to remind her that something was happening upstairs. Something deliberate. She turned onto her side and faced the wall. "This isn't normal city noise," she whispered to herself. The building felt different now. Not old. Not tired. Alert. Ava closed her eyes, but she did not fall asleep. She lay there, hyper-aware of every shift in the air, every tiny vibration in the ceiling, listening to the quiet that had been chosen for her. And for the first time since moving into Gyeryong House, she understood something simple and cold. She had knocked on the wrong door. Ava tried to sleep. She truly did. She lay under the blanket with her eyes shut, her body stiff, telling herself she was being dramatic. People in this city worked late. People moved furniture. People had guests. She was not a child. But her mind would not let go of the way the pacing had stopped. Immediately, perfectly, as if someone had turned it off because they could. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Time felt thick at night. Then a dull thud sounded overhead. Not a sharp drop. Not an accident. A heavy, blunt impact. Ava's eyes snapped open. She held her breath and listened. A second thud followed, slightly softer, as if something, or someone, had hit the floor again. Then a sound came through the ceiling that made her stomach twist. A rough inhale. A choking noise like someone was trying to swallow a groan. Ava sat up slowly. Her heart beat too hard in her chest. No. She told herself no. She had already complained once. She had already spoken to him. He had promised it would stop. It had stopped. The building was quiet now. She should take the quiet and mind her own business. Curiosity was dangerous. In any country. In any city. Ava swung her legs out of bed. Her bunny slippers sat near the bed like a joke from a different life. She didn't put them on. Suddenly they felt childish, too soft for the moment. She moved barefoot across the floor, careful not to make sound. When she opened her door, the hallway looked darker than before. The buzzing yellow bulbs still glowed, but the light felt weaker, like it was tired. The air smelled faintly of garlic and warm rice, but it was fading now, leaving behind cold concrete and stillness. Ava stepped into the corridor and listened. No footsteps. No laughter. No shouting. Nothing that sounded normal. Her body wanted to turn back. Her brain told her to turn back. But her feet carried her forward anyway, slow and quiet. Unit 7F. She approached it the way you approach a room after hearing glass break. Carefully, with your mind already preparing excuses for what you might see. The door was not closed. Not fully. Just barely open. A thin wedge of darkness showed at the edge, like the apartment was breathing through a crack. Ava's mouth went dry. She stopped. She should leave. She should go back and lock her door and pretend she heard nothing. But her eyes moved to the gap. And she stepped closer. The crack was narrow, but it was enough. Through it she saw tile floor and a strip of shadow. She saw the edge of a low table. Then she saw a man kneeling. Not sitting. Not sleeping. Kneeling. His hands were pulled behind his back. His shoulders were tense. His head was lowered but not in peace, like his neck was tired from holding weight. Blood dotted the tile in front of him. Not a pool. Not a flood. Small drops like careless paint. Ava's stomach tightened hard. Standing over him was Kong Min-jae. He looked calm. Too calm. He was not moving like someone shocked by violence. He stood like a man watching a clock, waiting for a result. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Min-jae turned his head slightly. Not startled. Not confused. As if he had felt her presence before she even got close. His eyes met hers through the crack in the door. For 1 second, Ava couldn't move. She couldn't step back. She couldn't step forward. She felt locked in place, stuck between instinct and pride, between survival and the terrible human need to understand. Min-jae raised his hand. A small motion. Not dramatic. Not loud. Inside the apartment, deeper in the darkness, a suited man shifted. Ava had seen him earlier, sharp suit, still posture. His face was not clear now, but his movement was immediate. The door began to open wider. Slowly. Controlled. Deliberate. Ava's pulse jumped. She forced her body to move, but it felt like her limbs had forgotten how. Min-jae's voice came low and even. Come in. Ava's throat tightened. No. Min-jae didn't blink. You already saw. That sentence landed like a cold truth. No comfort. No softness. Just reality. Ava swallowed. I'm leaving. She took 1 step backward. The kneeling man lifted his head slightly. His face came into view for a brief moment, swollen lip, one eye already bruising shut. His breathing looked shallow, controlled by pain. His eyes flicked to Ava. Just once. Quick. Sure. Memorizing. Ava's heart stuttered. That glance hit her harder than Min-jae's stare. Because Min-jae looked like a man with control. But the kneeling man looked like a man who might want revenge. A man who might later search for the face that witnessed him on his knees. Min-jae noticed it. Ava saw the smallest shift. His gaze moved to the kneeling man for a fraction of a second. The air changed. Not louder. Not angrier. Heavier. Eyes down, Min-jae said. 2 simple words. The kneeling man obeyed instantly. He lowered his gaze to the blood on the tile as if he had never dared lift his head at all. Min-jae looked back at Ava. His voice stayed calm. Go downstairs. Lock your door. Ava blinked. That's it. No threat. No apology. No warning. Just an instruction. Her mouth was dry. Her voice came out quiet. What is this? Min-jae held her gaze. Not your concern. Ava's chest rose and fell too fast. This is happening in my building, she whispered. In my hallway. Min-jae didn't move. You wanted quiet, he said. The words cut through her like a blade. Ava's throat tightened. She backed away slowly, step by step. She kept her eyes on him, refusing to turn her back until the door began closing again. It shut without a slam. No drama. Just a controlled seal, as if Min-jae could close worlds with his fingertips. Ava walked back to her apartment on legs that didn't feel like they belonged to her body. Inside she locked the door. Deadbolt. Then the chain. Her palms were damp. Her wrist felt cold. Her heart wouldn't slow. She pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. No shouting. No crashing. No sounds that would help her explain what she had seen. Just the building settling into silence again. But it didn't feel like normal silence. It felt supervised. Ava forced herself into bed. She lay rigid under the blanket, staring at the ceiling. When she finally drifted off, her sleep was shallow and sharp, like she was floating on the surface of a dark pool. Morning came too fast. She got dressed. She washed her face. She made coffee that tasted like nothing. She did not tell the landlord. She did not call the police. She didn't even tell a friend. Because what would she say? My neighbor was hurting a man on his floor. My neighbor looked at me like he expected me. My neighbor told me to lock my door like it was normal. At the Sora Museum Conservation Wing, the bright lights felt almost cruel. The smell of lacquer and solvent wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. Tools lay neatly arranged. The fractured panel waited on the table, fragile and silent. Ava put on gloves and began her work. Her hands were steady. That scared her. Because inside, her memory kept replaying one image: blood on tile, a bruised face, and the calm eyes of a man who had told her to go downstairs like he was giving directions. She kept her head down. She restored the panel with careful strokes. She smiled when spoken to. She nodded at the right moments. She acted normal. But the night stayed in her body. And even under bright museum lights, she could still feel the weight of that door not being closed. The message came at 5:12 p.m. Ava was still at the Sora Museum Conservation Wing, standing under white lights with a fine brush in her gloved hand. The fractured lacquer panel in front of her demanded steady breathing and patience. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She almost ignored it. Almost. When it vibrated a second time, she stepped back from the table and slipped one glove off. She checked the screen. A known number. Are you home? Her stomach tightened. Before she could respond, another message appeared. Don't go straight upstairs. Wait outside. Ava stared at the words. The lab hummed softly around her. Fluorescent lights buzzed. Someone down the row asked a quiet question about adhesive ratios. Everything felt normal. Her heartbeat did not. She typed slowly. Who is this? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Minjae. Her throat went dry. She never gave him her number. She was sure of it. A third message appeared. Don't go upstairs. Ava's pulse spiked. The part of her brain trained to analyze fragile objects began to calculate. How did he get her number? How easily? How quickly? She stripped off her gloves, told her supervisor she had a building issue, and left early. Her voice sounded steady. That frightened her more than anything. Outside the air was cool. Early evening in Mokrian City gave everything a metallic shine. People walked past with shopping bags and coffee cups, living quiet lives. Ava stood near the entrance of Guryong House and pretended to scroll through her phone. Her eyes, however, were tracking every movement around her. She typed back. There are men outside. The reply came immediately. I know. Her stomach dropped. Before she could respond again, the lobby door behind her opened. 2 men stepped inside. They were not loud. They were not rushing. They walked like they belonged anywhere they chose to stand. One was taller, broad, with pale skin and sharp features. The other had a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. The taller one spoke first. Ava Carter. Hearing her full name spoken out loud snapped something inside her. She didn't answer. The second man tilted his head slightly. We need to ask you about something you saw. I don't know who you are, Ava said. The taller man stepped closer. You were in Unit 7F. Her throat tightened. No. The faint smile disappeared. Don't lie. Ava's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear the hum of the building. The kneeling man. The glance. The blood. They knew. She typed with one hand without looking down. What? Her phone buzzed. Go out the front. Don't use the elevator. The taller man moved again. You saw our friend. Friend. The word made her stomach turn. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. The man's hand shot forward and wrapped around her wrist. The grip was hard. Her skin burned instantly under his fingers. Her body reacted before her mind could. She twisted, pulling back. Let go. The second man stepped closer, blocking her path. You saw his face, the taller man said softly. He saw yours. Ava opened her mouth to scream. The sound never came. A crack exploded through the lobby. Sure. Controlled. Precise. The taller man jerked. His grip vanished. His body staggered backward as if someone had cut invisible strings. A second crack followed. The smiling man spun once, confusion flashing across his face, and then he collapsed. The lobby went completely silent. No shouting. No chaos. Just the sudden absence of movement. Ava stood frozen, her wrist still burning where she had been grabbed. Footsteps approached. Not rushed. Measured. Kang Min-jae entered the lobby wearing a dark coat. His expression was calm. 2 suited men followed him, scanning corners, checking angles as if they had practiced this exact moment before. One stepped around the fallen bodies without hesitation. Minji's gaze went straight to Ava's wrist. He walked toward her. She flinched when he lifted his hand, unable to stop herself. He paused briefly, then gently took her wrist and turned it under the light. Are you hurt? He asked. It was the first real question he had ever asked her. No, she whispered. His thumb brushed once over the red mark. Then he let go and turned to his men. She's coming with me. One of the guards hesitated slightly. Sir. Min-jae cut him off with a glance. The guard fell silent immediately. Ava's heart raced. My apartment. My things. You'll get them. My passport is upstairs. You'll get it. My work bag. You won't go to work tomorrow. The way he said it made her understand something cold and heavy. He could erase her normal life with a sentence. She swallowed. Those men. They were sent to see what you know, Min-jae said. Her chest tightened. And to see whether you belong to me. The words landed hard. Ava forced herself to think. The kneeling man had seen her face. These men had known her name. They had been calm. Organized. This was not random. She was not invisible. She was a variable. She lifted her chin. So what? You're kidnapping me? If you want a word, Min-jae said evenly, call it protection. I didn't ask for it. You don't get to ask when you're already a target. The truth in that sentence burned. Ava looked at the bodies on the floor. The blood spreading slowly across tile. She felt something inside her shift. Not acceptance. Recognition. He was right about one thing. Staying here alone would not make this disappear. Min-jae placed his hand lightly at the small of her back. Not forcing. Guiding. Go. She moved. They crossed the street to a black car that looked expensive without trying to impress anyone. The door opened before she reached it. She hesitated. His hand pressed slightly at her back again. She slid inside. Min-jae followed. He spoke briefly into his phone in Korean. His voice was low and clipped. The car pulled away from Manduro. Ava watched her neighborhood blur past. Small shops. Familiar windows. The quiet building where she had tried to live simply. Then the city began to change. Roads widened. Buildings grew taller. Glass and steel rose into the evening sky. The car entered an underground garage beneath Orem Spire residences. A private elevator waited. No visible button panel. Min-jae stepped inside first. She followed. The guards remained outside. The elevator doors closed softly. He pressed a blank section of wall. The lift began rising. Higher. Higher. Ava's pulse beat in her throat. The doors opened to a space that did not feel like an apartment. It felt like control. Glass walls revealed the city below like a map of lights. Polished floors reflected soft overhead lighting. The air itself seemed filtered and quiet. Two suited men stood near the far wall. When Min-jae entered, they lowered their eyes. Not exaggerated. Reflexive. He did not introduce her. He did not explain. He simply said, "She stays on my level." The statement settled over the room. No one questioned it. The doors behind her closed with a smooth, final sound. Ava turned slowly, taking in the height, the glass, the silence. There were no locks on her wrists. No chains on the doors. But the world she had known that morning was already far below her. And she understood something with perfect clarity. She was not trapped by walls. She was trapped by reality. Inside Kang Minji's world. The penthouse at Orem Spire did not feel loud. It felt contained. The quiet was not natural. It was designed. Sound did not echo. Footsteps did not carry. Doors opened and closed without noise. Even the air seemed filtered, measured, controlled. Ava noticed it on the first morning. She woke in the guest room and lay still, waiting to hear the city. But the sounds of Mokrian City were distant, softened by glass and height. She could see the Sora River cutting through the skyline far below, but she could not hear traffic or voices. It felt like living inside a held breath. She stayed mostly in the guest wing during the first few days. The room was clean and simple. Low bed, neutral colors, fresh clothes folded neatly on a chair. Everything was provided before she could ask. When she stepped into the hallway, guards shifted slightly without looking at her. Doors opened before she reached them. Meals appeared on the table at exact times. The choreography was silent and precise. No one watched her openly. But she always felt watched. Min-jae did not hover. He did not ask her where she was going every hour. He did not question her movements inside the penthouse. But he also did not disappear. Some nights she would walk into the living area and find him standing near the glass walls, jacket off, phone pressed to his ear. His voice would be low, steady, speaking Korean in short sentences. She never understood the full meaning, but she understood the tone. Controlled. Calculating. He existed nearby the way gravity exists. Constant, invisible, shaping everything. On the fourth morning, she stood across from him at the long dining table. "I have a fellowship," she said plainly. "I can't vanish." Min-jae did not look up from his coffee. "You can." "I won't." Silence settled between them. Not angry. Measured. He took a slow sip of his coffee. His expression did not change. 3 days later, when Ava stepped outside in the morning, a black car was waiting downstairs. The driver opened the door without speaking. She looked back up toward the tower. Min-jae had not asked her permission. He had adjusted. Returning to the Sora Museum Conservation Wing felt strange after sleeping in glass and steel. The conservation lab smelled the same, lacquer, solvent, clean cotton gloves. The white lights were bright and honest. Her tools were exactly where she had left them. But something inside her had shifted. She bent over fragile artifacts by day, objects that required patience and gentle hands. She worked slowly, steady as ever. No one at the museum knew where she went at night. No one knew the world she now returned to after sunset. Each evening the black car was waiting. The driver never made conversation. The first 2 days, Ava tried not to think about it. On the third evening she noticed something else. A black sedan parked half a block away from the museum entrance. It was subtle. The engine running. The same car the next night. And the night after. It never approached her. It never made contact. It simply existed. That night at dinner she spoke casually. "There's been a sedan parked near the museum." Minji's fork paused midair. "License plate?" he asked calmly. She repeated the numbers from memory. He nodded once. That was all. The next evening the sedan did not return. Minjay did not mention it. He did not tell her what he had done. He did not explain. He simply ate his meal as usual. That silence unsettled her more than threats would have. By the second week she stopped eating alone. At first she would wait until he finished before entering the dining area. Or she would eat earlier. Then one night she walked in and sat down across from him without asking. He did not comment. They ate in silence. But it was different. Not cold. Not forced. Sure. She began noticing small things. He preferred tea in the evening, no sugar. He removed his jacket when he was tired, not when he arrived. He placed his phone face down on the table when he wanted to focus. She learned these details by watching, not asking. One evening she told a story from the museum. An artifact had been mislabeled for years. A simple error that changed the entire interpretation of its history. As she described the mistake and how the team discovered it, she laughed. It was the first real laugh she had let out since arriving at Orem Spire. Minjay went still. He did not smile. But his eyes lifted and fixed on her. Not analyzing. Not measuring. Watching. Like the sound surprised him. She noticed. The next night he remained at the table longer after finishing his tea. He did not speak. He simply stayed. During the third week, Ava wandered into a side office without thinking. Multiple screens covered one wall. Security footage. Different angles. Different streets. For one brief second she saw the exterior of the Sora Museum frozen on one screen. Then Minjay stepped in and closed the display with a single motion. The wall went dark. "They're still watching," she said quietly. "Yes." He did not deny it. "You didn't tell me." "I don't tell you everything." She studied him. "You don't have to." The words came before she fully understood them. She wasn't asking for control. She wasn't demanding information. She was acknowledging reality. Minjay looked at her differently after that. Not as someone under his protection. As someone choosing to remain there. The difference was subtle. But she felt it. By the end of the third week, the penthouse did not feel like a cage. It still had guards. It still had rules. Danger still existed outside those glass walls. But inside routines formed. They shared meals. They shared silence. He no longer assigned someone to follow her into the museum building. The guards remained outside instead. He began walking beside her at night when she returned, not because she asked but because he chose to. The quiet of Orem Spire no longer felt empty. It felt inhabited. The city glittered below them every night, untouchable and distant. Ava would sometimes stand near the glass and look down, thinking about Guryong House, about the narrow corridor and the buzzing yellow bulb. That life felt smaller now. Not simpler. Just smaller. Minjay would join her without speaking. He did not stand too close. He did not touch her. But his presence filled the space beside her. The held breath inside the penthouse slowly changed. It was no longer suffocating. It was watchful. Alive. Ava still knew danger waited outside. She still knew men had said her name like it was a detail in a file. But inside the glass walls of Orem Spire, something else was growing. Not safety. Not yet. Something steadier. The penthouse stopped feeling like somewhere she was kept. And started feeling like somewhere she had stepped into. Not forced. Chosen. And Minjay noticed that choice. By the fourth week, the rules around Ava changed without anyone announcing it. At the museum the guards still came. They still waited near the entrance. They still watched the street the way people watched weather, quietly, carefully, ready for sudden shifts. But they stopped following her inside. Ava noticed it the first morning it happened. She stepped out of the car and expected the usual shadow behind her. Instead, the suited guard stayed by the curb. Another stayed near the corner. They looked outward, not inward, scanning the world beyond her. Ava turned back once. The driver opened the door to leave, but no one moved to accompany her. She walked into the Sora Museum Conservation Wing alone. It felt like breathing. The lab was the same, bright lights, careful tools, soft voices. But her body had grown used to the presence of protection, used to the weight of being observed. The absence of it inside the building made her feel both free and exposed. That evening when she returned to Orem Spire, Min-jae was waiting. Not in the car. Not behind a wall of guards. He was in the lobby when the elevator doors opened, standing as if he had been there the whole time. Dark suit, calm face, no visible impatience. He didn't ask how her day went. He didn't ask if anyone spoke to her. He simply walked beside her as the elevator rose. For the next few nights he did the same. Min-jae began walking with her personally at night. Not because she asked. Because he wanted to. At first, Ava thought it was strategy. A test. A shift in his protection plan. But he didn't speak about it like a plan. He didn't give instructions. He didn't assign meaning. He just showed up. They would cross the penthouse together in silence. The city spread below them like a field of lights. And in that shared silence, Ava started to understand something unsettling. Min-jae was not only controlling danger. He was controlling distance. He decided when he was near her. And now he was choosing to be near. The storm came in the middle of the week. It started as rain tapping against the glass walls, light and steady. By late night it grew into something louder. Wind pushed the rain sideways. Thunder rolled across the skyline. Ava stood in the kitchen with a mug of tea she hadn't sweetened, because she'd noticed he didn't and she didn't want to look like she needed comfort. Her eyes tracked the rain streaking down the glass like long tears. Min-jae was at the counter, sleeves rolled up, looking at his phone. The tattoo at his wrist showed faintly, clean lines, deliberate geometry, as if even his ink had rules. Thunder hit harder. The lights flickered once. Ava froze, waiting. They steadied, then flickered again. And this time the penthouse dimmed. Not fully dark, but softer, less controlled. Ava lifted her eyebrows. Does the Empire survive a thunderstorm? Minji's gaze shifted to her. For a second his mouth almost curved. It wasn't a smile. Not quite. But it was something close enough to surprise her. Barely, he said. A small laugh slipped out of Ava before she could stop it. She shook her head. You're impossible. Min-jae didn't look away. And you're still here. The words landed heavier than they should have. Ava's chest tightened. She didn't like how true it was. The lights flickered again, then stabilized. But the storm had already changed the atmosphere. Candlelight appeared. Someone, probably staff, placed them quietly in the living area, then vanished again like the penthouse was a stage and everyone except Min-jae and Ava had been told to exit. Ava stepped toward the glass wall, watching the rain. The city below looked unreal, distant, softened by the storm. Min-jae moved behind her without noise. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to be felt. Ava's voice came out quieter than she intended. You don't have to pretend. Minji's tone stayed even. I don't pretend. Yes you do, Ava replied, turning slightly. You just do it silently. Minji's eyes sharpened. Silence stretched between them, long enough for Ava to regret speaking. Not because she feared punishment, but because she had stepped into a space between them that felt personal and dangerous. Min-jae walked toward her slowly. Deliberately. Not like a man charging. Like a man approaching a decision. His hand lifted and settled at her waist. Light pressure. A question without words. Ava's breath caught. Her body waited to see what she would do. She didn't move away. Minji's thumb brushed once against the fabric at her side, as if testing whether she would flinch. Ava stayed still. Minji's gaze held hers. Then he said her name. Ava. It sounded different than before. Not like a label. Not like a detail he had memorized. Like a choice. Ava swallowed. You're not afraid of me, he observed. The statement wasn't proud. It was almost curious. Ava's throat tightened. I am. Min-jae didn't blink. But I'm not running, she added, forcing the truth out in a steady voice. The storm rattled the glass. Thunder rolled again, lower this time, like the city was breathing in the dark. Min-jae stepped closer until their bodies were inches apart. He lowered his forehead to hers, a gentle pressure that shocked her more than anything else he had done. It wasn't ownership. It wasn't force. It was intimacy. His breath was warm against her skin. You don't understand what staying means, he said quietly. Ava's pulse pounded. Then show me. Min-jae hesitated. A real hesitation. small but visible. Like he understood that once he crossed this line, he wouldn't be able to step back into cold distance so easily. Only once, he murmured. Then he kissed her. It was not rushed. Not hungry. Measured. Deliberate. Like he was careful with her the way she was careful with fragile artifacts, knowing that pressure in the wrong place could change something forever. Ava's fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, anchoring herself. She didn't pull him closer. She didn't push him away. She simply stayed. When he pulled back, his eyes stayed on hers, steady and dark. The storm continued outside, but the space between them had changed. And Ava knew she couldn't pretend she hadn't felt it. 4 weeks after Ava first stepped into Orm's Spire, Min-jae finally called her into the darker wing of the penthouse. He didn't announce it earlier. He didn't prepare her with warnings. He simply appeared in the guest corridor and looked at her once. "Come," he said. Ava followed. They walked through a quiet hallway toward a sliding door that opened silently when Min-jae approached. The room beyond was colder in tone, long table, screens on one wall, men seated in suits, faces blank with discipline. The moment Min-jae entered, they stood. Not exaggerated. Reflexive. Their eyes lifted to him, then flicked to Ava. And immediately dropped. Like looking at her directly was not allowed. Ava's skin tightened. Min-jae didn't introduce her. He didn't explain why she was there. He didn't soften the moment for her. He looked at the room and said only, "She stays." 2 words. Final. The room accepted it without question. Ava took a seat at the edge of the table. Not in the center. Not claiming a place she hadn't earned. But she didn't shrink either. She sat upright, hands calm, face controlled. Min-jae moved to his position as if this was routine. The meeting began. And Ava understood, with a steady, quiet certainty, that she was no longer just a guest in his tower. She was the woman who stayed. And everyone in that room knew it. The meeting room felt colder than the rest of the penthouse. Not because of temperature but because of discipline. Ava sat at the edge of the long table, shoulders straight, hands folded neatly in front of her. Screens glowed on the wall. Men in suits sat with their backs rigid and their faces controlled. They spoke in low voices, not wasting words. Min-jae sat near the head of the table like he belonged there the way a lock belonged to a door. He didn't announce himself. He didn't demand attention. He simply existed and the room adjusted around him. A man to his left, Director Choi, spoke first. "Shipping routes from the East Port are unstable. 2 containers were delayed without explanation." Another man replied, "Our security contracts in the warehouse zone need reinforcement. They're testing the outer line." A third voice added, "Rivals are pressing into Harian district." Ava watched their mouths move and tried to follow the patterns the way she followed fracture lines in lacquer. Stress points. Weak points. The places where pressure would spread if it wasn't addressed. Minji's voice came calmly. "They've been testing since the building." The room went still for half a second. So they all knew. They had known about Gyeryong House, about the hallway, about the first moment Ava had become a problem in someone else's plan. Ava felt her stomach tighten. A man across the table shifted slightly, eyes flicking toward her. He cleared his throat as if to ask a question. "Sir, the woman?" Min-jae glanced at him. It was not a dramatic look. It wasn't even angry. It was final. The man stopped mid-sentence as if his voice had hit an invisible wall. He lowered his gaze immediately. Ava's skin prickled. Min-jae didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to threaten. His authority lived in silence. The meeting continued. Numbers appeared on screens. Names Ava didn't recognize. Times, windows, routes. Men talked about contracts and territory the way museum staff talked about temperature and humidity, like the survival of something important depended on exact control. Then Ava heard it. A small detail. A mention of timing that didn't match the tone of the rest. A window. An opportunity. It sounded too clean. Too convenient. Like someone wanted Min-jae to react at a specific moment, in a specific way, where eyes could watch and record what he did. Ava's mind connected the dots before she could stop it. She spoke. "They didn't come to question me." Every head turned. Silence crashed down over the room. Ava's throat tightened, but she didn't back away. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Minji's eyes shifted to her. Not soft. Not amused. A question without words. Ava swallowed. The first attack, those 2 men in the lobby, was small. Too small. Director Choi's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" Ava kept her voice calm. If they wanted answers, they would have brought more people. They would have moved differently. They came to see if he would expose himself. She glanced toward Min-jae and then back to the men. They came to test your response. To see what you would do, how fast, how loud, how public. A slow breath moved through the room. Ava continued, the words coming faster now because once she began, she couldn't unsee the pattern. It was a probe. The point wasn't to succeed. The point was to watch. A man on the far side of the table muttered, and the second attempt? Ava's jaw tightened. It will be bigger. And staged somewhere they expect him to hesitate. The room shifted, not panicked but alert. Min-jae didn't silence her. He didn't correct her. He didn't tell her to stop speaking. That alone changed how the men looked at her, briefly, carefully, before lowering their eyes again. Min-jae spoke at last, calm as ever. You wanted to understand how this works. Ava's pulse jumped. He looked directly at her. You're coming with me tonight. Ava's mouth went dry. Where? Min-jae didn't answer the question the way she asked it. Close. Public. Controlled. The words felt like a door closing. Later, in her room, Ava stared at the black dress laid out for her. It wasn't flashy. It was elegant in a quiet way. Simple lines. Expensive fabric. A dress chosen to make her look like she belonged beside a man like Min-jae. Her hair was pulled back neatly by Ms. Han. No loose pieces. No softness. Clean and sharp. Ava barely recognized herself. When she stepped into the main living space, Min-jae was waiting in a dark suit. He looked the same as always, controlled, calm, built from patience and violence held under glass. His gaze flicked over her once. Not admiration. Assessment. Then his hand moved to the small of her back. Anchoring. Claiming without words. They arrived at the Meridian Orchid Hotel with no drama. A private entrance. Quiet security. Marble floors that glowed under chandelier light. The air smelled like expensive perfume and polished stone. Inside, the black velvet auction was already in motion. People laughed softly. Glasses clinked. Bids lifted in smooth voices. Art and objects sat under spotlight like trophies. Ava walked beside Min-jae and felt the room's attention turn toward them like a current. Not rude staring. Careful watching. As if everyone could feel that something dangerous had entered. Min-jae leaned slightly toward her. Stay close. Ava's lips barely moved. I don't have anywhere else to go. His eyes flicked to her mouth for half a second, then away. Cold. Controlled. But something under it tightened. Ava tried to focus on normal details. Music, polite smiles, the rustle of dresses, the calm rhythm of rich people pretending the world was safe. Then she felt it. A shift. Not loud. Not obvious. Something in the air changed like pressure dropping before a storm. A man in a suit moved behind her. Too close. Ava's skin prickled. She glanced at the mirrored wall near the corridor and saw it. Her own reflection, Minji's dark shape beside her, and a hand reaching toward her wrist. Her body reacted instantly. She twisted away. But the grip closed anyway. Art. Ava's breath caught. The man's voice came low by her ear. Don't move. For a split second everything felt slow. The auction room blurred at the edges. The music faded. The lights seemed too bright. Ava turned her eyes toward Min-jae. He had already seen. His entire body went still, not confused, not surprised, deciding. Then he moved. Fast. So fast the crowd barely understood what happened before he was there. His hand clamped around the attacker's throat. The attacker's eyes widened. He tried to pull something from his jacket. Min-jae drove his knee into the man's abdomen with brutal precision. The attacker folded, choking on air. Min-jae ripped him away from Ava as if her space had been violated, as if the man's fingers had touched something sacred. The room froze. A few guests stepped back. Someone gasped softly. Security hesitated, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they hadn't seen anything. Min-jae didn't look at them. He looked at Ava. You're not hurt, he said. It wasn't a question. Ava swallowed. No. Minji's gaze dropped to her wrist. A red mark was already forming where the attacker had gripped her. For the first time, Ava saw Minji's control crack. Not into panic, not into softness. Into rage. Quiet, contained, but sharp enough to cut. He turned back to the attacker and grabbed his collar, hauling him upright like the man weighed nothing. Then Min-jae spoke, calm again, cold enough to freeze blood. Bring him. Two of Minji's men appeared immediately as if they had been waiting in the walls. They took the attacker's arms without hesitation. The crowd parted instinctively as Min-jae walked. Ava pulled with him by the invisible force of his hand at her back. They moved through a private corridor behind the auction hall. Past silent service doors. Past clean hallways that smelled like disinfectant and money. Ava's heartbeat hammered as the sounds of the party disappeared behind them. A door opened ahead. Cold night air rushed in. A terrace. Secluded. Dark. The city spread below like a field of lights. Min-jae stepped onto the terrace without slowing. His men dragged the attacker after him. Ava followed, because she had been brought, because she had warned him, and because now she had to see what her warning meant. The terrace door shut behind them. And the real rules began. The terrace door shut behind them with a soft, sealed sound. Cold air hit Ava's face immediately, sharp enough to sting her lungs. The night wind moved fast at this height, sliding around the building like it owned the sky. Far below, Mokrian City glittered, cars like slow beads of light, windows like scattered stars. From up here, the city looked clean and distant, as if nothing ugly could ever happen inside it. But Ava knew better. The attacker was forced to his knees near the terrace railing. Two suited men held his arms tight, keeping him steady. His breathing was rough. His suit jacket had shifted from the struggle. His eyes were wide now, no longer calm. Min-jae stepped forward as if the cold didn't touch him. He looked exactly the way he had looked in the auction hall, calm, controlled, finished with patience. Ava stood a few steps behind him. Her wrist still throbbed where the man had grabbed her. The red mark felt louder than it should have, like her skin was trying to warn her. Minji's voice cut through the wind. "Who sent you?" The attacker coughed once and tried to lift his chin. "You already know." Min-jae didn't blink. "Say his name." The words were quiet. Not shouted. Not angry. But they carried weight. The attacker spat blood onto the terrace floor and laughed, broken and bitter. "Kang Min-jae," he said, dragging the name out like an insult. "The Great Protector." The mockery was meant to humiliate him. It did not. Minji's expression didn't change. His eyes didn't flare. He didn't step back. But the air shifted anyway. Ava couldn't explain it, but she felt it, the temperature of the moment dropping. Min-jae turned his head slightly and spoke to one of his men. "Bring the leader." The command was simple. Immediate. One of the men touched an earpiece and spoke quietly. The other kept the attacker pinned down without effort. Ava's chest tightened. "Bring the leader" meant this wasn't just about one man in a suit. This wasn't just a warning. This was a message. The attacker's smile faltered for the first time. His eyes flicked around like he finally understood where he truly was. Footsteps sounded behind them. A second door opened onto the terrace. Two more suited men dragged someone out. This man did not stumble. He walked as much as the grip allowed, posture straight, face composed even under pressure. His suit was perfectly fitted. His hair was neat. He looked like someone who had always believed he belonged in rooms where people were afraid to breathe wrong. His eyes lifted and landed on Min-jae. Hate flashed there. Cold. Controlled. Then his gaze shifted to Ava. It wasn't a long stare. It didn't need to be. Ava saw it anyway, the calculation, the message, the quiet claim. Sergei Volkov. A man who wanted her to understand that even in humiliation he could still mark something. Ava's stomach twisted. Min-jae saw it too. His gaze moved once, just once, to Sergei's eyes, then to Ava. The smallest pause. Then Min-jae stepped forward. "You wanted to touch what stands under my protection," he said softly. Sergei's lip curled. "Protection," he repeated like the word tasted bitter. "You made her visible. You made her a target." Min-jae nodded once. "Yes." The simple agreement startled Ava more than denial would have. Min-jae didn't pretend innocence. He didn't hide behind excuses. He accepted the truth like it was part of the cost. Sergei's eyes narrowed. "You think keeping her beside you makes you strong?" Minji's voice stayed calm. "It makes you careless." Ava's pulse hammered. This was not a conversation she could interrupt. Not a moment where she could step in and soften anything. The words were not meant for comfort. They were meant for order. Min-jae turned his head slightly toward Ava. "Look at me." Ava blinked. The command was not harsh. But it was not optional. Her eyes met his. Minji's gaze was cold, steady, and completely focused. Not on Sergei. Not on the men. On her. And Ava understood why he did it. He did not want her staring at the gun. He did not want her watching blood. He wanted her to understand that this wasn't theater. This was consequence. A truth in his world. He spoke again, still looking at her for a beat longer. "You wanted to understand what staying means." Ava's throat tightened. Then Min-jae turned back to Sergei. "Tell your people," Min-jae said softly, "they don't reach for what stands beside me." Sergei's eyes flashed. "You're proving my point," he hissed. "You're proving you?" Min-jae lifted his hand slightly. Not dramatic. A small motion. And the sound that followed was sharp and final. A gunshot. Ava flinched hard, her whole body reacting like the noise had hit her bones. Sergei's body jerked and then collapsed onto the terrace floor. The city lights below kept shining as if nothing had changed. The wind kept moving. The world did not pause. Ava stood frozen, breath caught in her throat. Part of her wanted to run. To turn and bolt through the terrace door, down the hall, out of the hotel, into a normal street with normal people and normal fear. But she didn't. She forced her feet to stay planted. She forced her shoulders to remain straight. She chose stillness. She chose adulthood. Minjae turned toward her immediately. His hand lifted to her face, and this time the touch was gentle enough to shock her. He cupped her jaw as if checking whether she was real, whether she had shattered. His thumb brushed her cheekbone once. "You're shaking," he said. Ava swallowed hard. "I'm fine." Minji's eyes held hers. "No." The honesty in that single word tightened Ava's throat. Her voice came out low. "I didn't understand what standing beside you meant." Minjae didn't soften. He didn't apologize. He simply said, "You do now." A beat. "And you're still here." Ava's chest rose and fell slowly. She nodded once because she couldn't trust words. Minji's voice dropped slightly, intimate without being kind. "You won't be touched again." Ava's breath shook. "You can't promise that." Minji's gaze cut through her. "Watch me." The words should have terrified her. Instead, something inside Ava responded, a dark, alive part of her that understood certainty when it was offered. Back at Orem's Spire, the penthouse greeted them with its curated quiet, as if the storm of the terrace had never happened. The doors closed. The guards moved like shadows. Minjae dismissed his men with a glance. Distance collapsed. Ava stood in the living room, still in the black dress, still feeling the cold wind in her memory. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said, voice tight. Minjae stepped closer. "I know." Ava swallowed. "But I'm still here." Minji's eyes held hers. For a moment, something flickered beneath the cold, relief, dark and unspoken. "You won't get a softer version of me," he said quietly. Ava's voice came out steady. "I don't want one." Minji's breath hitched once, small, rare. Then he kissed her. Slow. Deliberate. Not rushed. Not careless. Devotion threaded through danger, and Ava felt it like a vow. When he pulled back, his forehead rested briefly against hers. Outside the glass walls, the city kept shining. The danger did not disappear. It stayed in the streets and shadows, waiting for its next opening. But inside, Ava understood the truth she couldn't deny anymore. Some doors shouldn't be knocked on at 3 a.m. But sometimes the wrong door leads you into the right fire. And when that fire looks at you and says you are safe here, you either run or you stay. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more interesting stories.